The greatest sports stars are best defined by their achievements on the days that mattered most. Mick Kinane rode 1,500 winners around the world and was crowned Irish champion jockey on 13 occasions. But for many fans of flat racing, few could match his reputation as a big race rider. A cold, calculating temperament and the innate ability to make the right decision more often than not produced a huge haul of Group and Grade 1 wins, including 6 aboard one of the all-time greats, See the Stars, in what was a fairy tale final season in the saddle. Michael Kinane, thank you very much for having us at your place. Steve and I obviously conducting the series of Racing Greats, and obviously you're a candidate for this with all the great horses that you've ridden in, your part that you've played in the sport of horse racing over the years. But what I wanted to start with was whether or not you were always going to become a flat jockey. Were you always going to become a jockey, given your own pedigree?
Oh, I was always going to become a jockey. I just no interest in school. I just wanted to ride horses. But came from a national hunt family. Dad, his uncles all rode over jumps. And at the time, Dad just said, you know, go and polish yourself off and ride on the flat for a few years until you get too heavy, and then you can go jumping. And that's the way it started. And fortunately, I never had to go jumping.
Your dad was associated with one of the great jumpers as well.
Yeah, Monksfield, yeah. And you know, the horse, he sort of very instrumental in me getting going on my second year. I won an apprentice race on him. Beat Tommy Carmody at the time, who was champion apprentice, and from that point, things sort of took off.
You rode your first winner with your first ride.
Yeah.
At Leopardstown, March 1975, and you were still at school?
Was, yeah. Doing my tests in 5th year, had a day off, luckily, you know, and went at Leopardstown and had a ride. It won. I don't think I'd win in him today. It was just sheer naivety. He ended up a cracking sprinter. He won it over a mile and a half. I was just told, drop him out last and go around the inside. I did that until my arms gave out and let him go.
Yeah, and that was Muscari. Yeah. You were champion apprentice, I think, in 1978. You won the title 13 times. But I think the first very good horse, and before we start talking about the horses, I think it's worth us prefacing what's coming up by saying it's been very difficult narrowing down the list of great horses. I mean, obviously, there'll be some that some people would want to hear about, and there'll be others that people think, well, how come they made the list? But it's very difficult when you've ridden so many good horses to fit them all in this time. So we've come up with a list, and hopefully we all agree as we go along. But the first very good horse you rode was Darragh Monarch, who I think had run in the English Guineas, came back to win the Irish Guineas, and you were on board for the win in the Irish Guineas. Yeah,
I had won a trial on him prior to him going to Newmarket, and I wasn't able to go because I was retained by a trainer called Michael Cons at the time, and I was required at home. And he ran quite well in Newmarket, and then came back to the Curragh, and I got back on him, and he won. So it was my first class. It was very important, and he went on and won the St James's Palace, which was great at the time to be able to. Generally, the Irish didn't travel very far.
I was going to ask about that because after the Irish Guineas, were you always definitely going to ride him at Royal Ascot?
Well, I think so, and at least I did, and you know, so that was the uncertainty at the time, of the experience, you know. So, but the reality of, unless you get the experience, you can't prove it, you know. Yeah. Yourself good enough.
And the feel of a horse, a classic winning horse, was that something very different for someone who's about to embark on the career that you would after?
Yeah, to get the feel of the real one, it's rare, you know. And if you're lucky enough to get that touch on one, you get to say, oh, this is rare air, so it's something you want to pursue. It's like a very fast car.
It's funny, if talking to some friends beforehand, if you had to say one word about your career at the end, it was like known as a big race jockey and a go-to jockey. Lots of different trainers would go to you. But one of the significant horses who started that role, if you like, a few years after Dermot was Carroll House, who obviously went on to win the Arc. But you rode him for the first time in the Irish Champion, didn't you? Just wonder how you got the ride. It wasn't obvious that I don't think you'd ridden that much from Michael Jarvis at that stage. Not a tremendous amount anyway. How did that ride come about?
Well, at the time we didn't have Sunday racing, and I had started. Dermot had targeted a few races down in Italy. Italy was huge at the time. I won the Guineas down there, won a Derby. And every Sunday you'd have Willie and Pat Edery and all the major jockeys and English trainers bringing their horses to run in the big races. So I was mixing with Pats and this world and was getting the attention by the English trainers that I can mix it with them. So that was, and of course Carroll House was owned by Balzerini, who Italian owner at the time, who had noticed what I could do, and through that it started really.
Because Walters rode him you said he couldn't ride him in the Irish Champion.
Yeah, he couldn't ride an Irish Champion, and I was lucky enough to get on him, and he won. It was difficult on firm ground on that day, but he got through, and yeah, and I got.
And the heavens came right for him. The heavens came right for him in the Arc, you were saying.
Absolutely. Heading to Paris, it was good to firm, and I was sort of dreading him because he was so difficult to ride in the Irish Champion on firm ground. I thought, this is not going to be an easy Sunday. But then, we get there, and it had been deluge overnight, and it just sort of, as we spoke about it in the jocks room, there were Steve and Pat and a few of us, and started going through the list, and that won't go on, that ain't going on. And I said, "You a fella going to go?" So I said, "Hey, love it." I thought I was on a jolly, and suddenly I was on I was on a horse with a big chance.
Yeah.
And survived the stewards' inquiry, and
yeah,
and held it. Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit more about that race, because obviously, when you consider the fact that you're still coming up through the international big race ranks, the Arc is now considered the big race of the year in Europe. What was the experience like, obviously, in the race itself, and then the aftermath of winning your first Arc?
Like, I went a little bit wider that day than ideal, but he was just travelling so well. The ground, he was just thriving on the ground. And, I had a few tips from, Yves Samathan said, don't move into small straight, that's a killer. A few little tips, and I was lucky. I was always a pretty instinctive rider anyway, so, and it was a marvellous day. I'd won the Cartier Million on the Saturday and win an Arc on a Sunday. You don't make weekends like that. You can't dream them up even.
Yeah. And you say instinctive rider, that was something you're born with. It's not something you can learn, is that right?
Yeah, it is. There's no doubt, and you can teach a guy so much, but unless you can understand what's happening as it goes, you can set out with plan A, but it's very seldom plan A falls into place. It's often plan D, so. And you can never be in a panic situation. You shouldn't, because if you can't go, it means they're going too quick.
Yeah.
So you just have to make it up. You just have to have enough confidence in what you do yourself to know that you're doing the right thing. If you second guess yourself, well, your thoughts are not clear.
Yeah. So Darren Monarch, Carroll House, terrific. Carroll House wins the Arc, brilliant, great stuff. But to do what you did, and Dermot Well did, with a horse called Vintage Crop, something that will resonate through history. Years after we're all gone and we're all talking, they'll talk about the time that Dermot Well, Mick Kinane and the team sent Vintage Crop down to Australia to win the Melbourne Cup. When we say that now, what's going through your mind? What are you thinking? What are you feeling?
It was just, to be part of history, and for it to go to plan. The horse he's an unusual horse, he didn't take any work. If you showed him a rerun of a gallop, he'd be happy. He'd just go back to his box. One of those horses you show him a gallop, he was fine.
That's my kind of horse.
Yeah, and because he turned up in Australia and hadn't run for 150 odd days, and if you can't run in the Caulfield Cup, you can't win. You can't be fit enough to go that far, and he's an ex-hurler, and and they talked him out of the race. They were waiting him to see him gallop and clock him in Sandown, where it was the quarantine area. Of course, that never happened, even time. This horse can't win, So they made Drum Tap's favourite.
Yes.
And I had beat Drum Taps at level weights at the Curragh easily. And I was £7 better off with him. or 8 on the day. So like if you were looking at a handicap, this was just, you know, you couldn't make drum taps ahead of him. So when we turned up, and then the rain followed us, which was great. And you know, the rest was history. It was great. It was a fantastic. I thought he had a huge chance to win, as you know, he was well handicapped. Dermot had it well set up. Hadn't gone the year before, luckily, because it just the logistics of travel was just, it was just going to be, it was all over the place. And fortunately, he was a better horse the following year. So, and he was in his prime at 7, probably was he 7? Yeah.
Had you ridden the course before?
No.
So you're saying about?
No, I turned up. I was in Hong Kong. I had started my 6-month stint in Hong Kong, my first year in Hong Kong doing that. And so yeah, I had Kevin Moses, Ron Quinton. I had spoke to a lot of good pals, Aussies, about the track and the nuances and whatnot. And I turned up and walked the track. And you know, they said, don't move before the clock tower. I had to find where the clock tower was. But anyway, we found the clock tower, which is once you straighten up about the 2-pole. You know, that was the adage, don't move before that. And the rest was great.
Extraordinary, because he had, Steve, I think we were talking about this, and when we spoke to Dermot Well, he mentioned about how the horses travel over there was such a challenge, just even getting there. You know.
Even on the day we won, the fog descended here at Dublin the year he won, and it looked like the plane had a few attempts to come in and didn't get it, and suddenly there was a window, and he got it and got the plane in, and the horse had to be in the airport within an hour from Roseville. Got there, made the flight to make the connection. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened. It was just. The stars aligned, you know, for it to happen.
He ran twice more and ran well in the race.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, he like I got a flack for him one year, but he ran with 17 stitches in his elbow. It wouldn't happen today. You know, he got something spooked him as he was walking through the aluminium railings, and he hit it, and he had 17 stitches. I had to keep him on there. I couldn't get him knocked around, but everybody just, you know, if it was today, he wouldn't have run. Yeah. And then he he just couldn't get started. He would get a bit arthritic behind. You know, he had back problems, and like his last run when he ran third, I think.
Third.
He just couldn't get going early and flew home. That was probably his best ever effort. And even when he won, you know. Yeah.
Because you didn't ride him when he was almost the easiest with the Cesarewitch I've ever seen.
I was in Hong Kong. I'd started I'd taken out doing 6 months in Hong Kong. That was my first year to do that. Walter won on him.
Yeah.
He bolted up. Yeah.
I think Rishi might have won him that day, to be fair.
I would have backed him that day. But it was just the fact that it's funny you say that he would have preferred to watch a rerun of himself galloping, because he just looked the most laid-back horse through a race, and to ride, it looked like he would switch off so easily for you. Which, if you have a horse that does that in those staying races, it's for us watching, it's kind of half the battle.
Yeah, you could ride him a string, you know. He was a lovely, pleasant horse, you know, eager to please and just never over-raced. But he was a lot quicker horse than people gave him, you know. He was a pacey horse, you know. He wasn't 2 mile really. Like, and even when we tried to win a Gold Cup with him, it just was beyond him, way beyond his stamina, even though he ran fantastically well. Yeah. He was ideally a 1.6 mile horse. You know? That was his optimum trip, you know.
He won a couple of Irish Leisures, didn't he? I think.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
And it's still Bob's return, blazing the trail. Tenby the odds on favoured in second place. The pink cap on the outside, Blues Traveller. Leicester's only got 4 behind, but one of those is the American Raider, Wolf Prince. Parathea pulls wide and starts a run. Pushed along is Blue Judge. Also pushed along Planetary Aspect. The pace is unrelenting, and they begin the descent to Tattenham Corner, and round the corner they come with 3.5 furlongs to go. And it's Tenby in the middle of the 3 front runners, with Bob's return the inside. Blues Traveller running a bid race. Parathea off the pace is poised to challenge Leicester. On Fatherland is 8 lengths off the pace as they pass the 3. And it's Blues Traveller a rank outside, and Tenby is swamped for run there and has to be checked on the outside. Commander-in-Chief has delivered his challenge, and it's Commander-in-Chief by 2 lengths now to Parathea as they pass the 2. Tenby is beaten, and it's Commander-in-Chief, his stable companion, going 3 clear of Parathea, with Blues Traveller, who's run a terrific race around as they come inside the final furlong. Commander-in-Chief and Mick Kinane on his 5th Derby ride, clear by 6 to Blues Traveller and Parathea, and staying on best of all on the outside is Blue Judge. Up towards the line, the Commander's in charge. Commander-in-Chief takes the Derby.
The next horse I'm going to mention is very much in the category of the go-to jockey. Commander-in-Chief, you won the Derby. I believe it's the only time you ever rode the horse in its whole career. I look at Pat Edgery, rode it I think every other time, and he would have ridden the day, but he rode the favourite.
He was money on or short price favourite, wasn't he? Did he win the Dante? Or?
He won the Dante.
Won the
Dante, yeah. He was only a little horse, I remember. But I remember speaking to Henry, and God rest him, he was a great, lovely man. Michael, this is not a second string, he said. This is a big chance. So he was right.
You said an interesting thing when we were talking about this in the kitchen floor. You said that a lot of horses, in a sense, ran like their trainer's character. Would that be a fitting for Henry Cecil horses?
Yeah, you knew they were fit, and
Yeah.
you could drive on. You know, they were a bit like him. You know, straightforward, go on, and you know they'd keep it going for you. You know.
Were you confident on the day? I mean, it's quite an easy winner in the end,
It
wasn't
was very easy. Yeah.
it?
Yeah, they were. You know, Henry thought he had a big chance, and you know, his little ease in the ground. He said, "This is not the second string," and if he had the money on favour, and I was on not the second string, I knew I had a big chance. So yeah, it was great.
And the Derby, the ranking of that event, obviously you've won the Arc. We mentioned obviously Vintage Crop in the Melbourne Cup, but what about the Derby and where that sat in the ambitions for a young Michael Kinane?
It's huge. You know, I think no matter who you are as a jockey coming up, you want to win an Epsom Derby. It is like it's that red disc that defines our breeding industry. You don't mind the commercial end of it, but you know, when the mares and the dams it will all filter through that. It is still the great race.
You were saying, again, I read something you said about, although it has its critics, I'm glad you said this, I'm a fan of it myself, but you were saying that Epsom is a real test for a thoroughbred. It tests everything about a thoroughbred.
Oh, absolutely. You know, they have to have pace to get the position from the first corner, and then you climb. But you have to walk it to realise what Epsom is about. You know, when I turned up first time and walked Epsom, I was only a young apprentice. When I rode in a listed race there, I said, this can't be Epsom. You know, because I had that mental picture of this has got to be the greatest race course of all time. Now it is the greatest test of all time, but it's not the greatest race course, because you climb so much, the camber, the downhill, like it asks everything of a horse, of his balance and his courage. You know, so it's a huge test.
Okay, so the Derby's in the bag. Then you started riding for obviously all the big trainers. Everybody wanted a Mick Kinane in the saddle. And you formed a very good relationship, which lasted for a long time with Michael Stout, Sir Michael Stout now. And you got on board one of his best older horses for a series of runs in 1997 on a horse called Persad, who I remember physically, he was a great bull of a horse. So Michael always should talk about how he was developing as he got to 4 and 5. What was he like to sit on?
Okay, he was a beautiful horse. But he was one of those horses you could really be part of. You know, some horses are more difficult to get him to stretch and do things. Like he would let his head out and he'd point his nose. And he just would try and try. He was just a pleasure to ride. You know, you always went out and you knew what it was going to get.
Yeah.
You know, and you could be so confident on him because you knew when you done that, it was there, and if you had to really go and fight for it, it was there. You know, so he was such a lovely balanced horse. And yeah, it was a great time on him. He was a phenomenal racehorse.
He had a tough campaign that year by modern day standards. I mean, I think he ran in France in April, Royal Ascot. Then he won that Eclipse, which had Boss Rasham, Benny the Dip, etc.
Yeah, he wasn't a real 1.5 mile horse. 1.25 miles really on fast ground he's optimum. He would get 1.5 miles on fast ground, but he came unstuck a few times on easy surface, you know. But you know, and he fought his way through a great year, and then you know won a Japan Cup, and he just.
Well, funny you said that about the 1.5 miles on easy ground, because after the Eclipse, I remember being at Ascot for the King George, and it poured with rain, and I backed Persad, of course, and 2 furlongs out, I was thinking how far, because I thought you were travelling really easy on him. Swain was out in front, and hard. I mean, he did stick his neck out so hard for you, but it just dragged it out of him.
Yeah, he wasn't a soft ground horse, and he wasn't a soft ground, mile and a half soft ground horse.
Yeah.
You know, he was a really pacey horse.
And he's winning the Irish champion.
I
mean, that was a joy to
walk
watch.
in the park, yeah.
You didn't have to move much on that.
No. Luckily, I got paid for it. I probably didn't deserve much, but.
Yeah.
Was he an easy man to ride for, Michael Stark? He had a good association.
Yeah. So Michael I enjoyed my time. I used to stay with him. And yeah, I know I never was stable jockey for him, but it was. I would have liked to have been. You know, we had a good association, and yeah, I enjoyed riding for Sir Michael.
And the way the Pilsudski bounced out of that race, he obviously won the Irish champion easily, and then he went and he finished second in the Arc to Pontre Celeb, which was a fine run because that horse was outstanding.
Yeah.
And then he came out, I think it was 7 or 8 days later, and he won the Champion Stakes on the first ever Champions Day.
Yeah.
And then he went to Japan.
Yeah.
I mean, quite incredible that he had that constitution.
He had a great mind, and he was such a sound horse, you know, and loved his racing. They have to, you know, and they'll know they're winners, those good horses. You know.
And what was that Japan Cup experience like? I mean, had you had much?
No, God, like when you're in front of the stand, it could be 135,000 people jammed, and when the rostrum goes up, it lights the place up, and you're right in front of it. Again, if you have a horse of a nervous disposition, it'll just lose its life, you know.
Yeah.
And they had a very short price filly that day. I think it was Air Groove, and I got into Titanic battle and got the best of it. It was a fabulous day. Yeah, it was great.
One thing I think we should just touch on was winning a Belmont Stakes.
Yes.
On Go and Go.
Yeah. Wow, I remember turning up, and you know, it was a bit surreal. Like, he was a horse that went to the States as a tour. I didn't go for tourity. I forget where it was. I was here on duty anyway. Dermot said he'd send him out there. There was a Group 2 on the turf. Anyway, it got rained out, so they switched it to the dirt, and he wins it. You know, totally out of the, you know, wouldn't have seen that coming by a mile. He wins it, and so Dermot then plotted it that we'd have a go at the Belmont, which is the race that they're really vulnerable at. It's the end of a very busy 5-week period, and it's a mile and a half, and mostly none of them are able to stay it.
Yeah.
And we went in with a fresh horse, and it was like a piece of work. Like, it was just, you know, it was just one of those mind-blowing days, you know. He just blew them away, you know.
Did you enjoy riding on the dirt? Just out of interest. Obviously, most of your wins we talked about have been on grass.
Yeah, you had to have the right horse, because otherwise, then it's like it's a lot of kickback, and horses, you know, horses have they have to be courageous to do it, you know, because a lot of times you can't see a lot, and they most certainly can't, you know. So you know, it just goes to show the courage that horses. Not really, no. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
When it became sloppy, because I felt it was very difficult.
Yeah.
You know, very difficult and everything. But that's the nature of what they do. You know, I couldn't say I would get up in the morning to ride in the dirt again. You know, so.
Yeah. Obviously, lots of success around the world. One horse in Hong Kong, I think we should mention, Viva Pitaka, who you won a lot of races on, a lot of big races on.
Yeah.
That was a very, very good horse.
Oh, he was a very good mile and a half horse, mile and a quarter horse really. He got a mile and a half in Hong Kong because a lot of them don't quite get it. You know, a lot of them Australian horses are not bred to. But he had a really horse that loved to wait and had a great turn of foot. Yeah. You know, he was really suited to the place. Yeah, so it was. I had a couple of great days with him, and particularly one day after breeding. Riding in the Epsom Derby, I had bred authorised to win.
Yes.
And then jumped on a plane and was in Hong Kong the next day, and I won both Group 1s, Viva Pitaka, and I won the Classic Mile, whatever it was on the day. So that was one of the memorable weekends. Yeah,
back manager would have been happy that weekend.
Exciting place for racing as well, Hong Kong. I know you're still associated with it.
Yeah, it was a second home for me for a good period of my life, and you know, a town that I love, and I've had great success in, and it's great now that I still have an association with the Hong Kong Jockey Club. You know.
Yeah.
If we stopped here and said, the Japan Cup on Persad, the Derby on Commander-in-Chief, Vintage Crop in the Melbourne Cup, and the Arc on Carroll House. That's enough for most riders. But there's a whole lot more to come.
Very different sort of horse next as well. You've associated a lot of the horse we're talking about middle distance horses, but Stravinsky was one of the better sprinters you rid, and he came to sprint not late, but I think the July Cup was his first sort of go at sprinting. He'd been running over further, hadn't he?
Yeah, like he was a very, very good 2-year-old.
Yeah.
And then just didn't. 7 furlong was probably his optimum distance if everything went really right.
Right.
So he was tried him to stay, but then he got a little bit disillusioned probably not being able to stay. He was having a harder time than he should have been having, and then it was great. They dropped him back and put a pair of visors on him, and he was just like he was electric. And I don't think there was ever a more impressive July Cup winner than him before or since.
No, he was really brilliant that day, and he proved how fast he was because he won a Nunthorpe as well. I mean, he was a very, very fast one. One of the in some ways underrated sprinters when we talk about sprinters now.
Absolutely,
one of the better ones.
Yeah, he was
as good as you rode, would you say, over sprint trips?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was brilliant.
And the July Cup performance is one of the most pleasing to watch from watching a horse travel. But the thing is that we often watch those races, and the impression you're getting is of a horse accelerating, and then sometimes you look at the times and actually they're not accelerating. On that day, did he pick up? Because it looked to me like he just sat there. You sat there travelling, and when you asked him to quicken, he just took off.
Took off up the hill, yeah. He just couldn't get going quick enough. He was just, he was just really peaked and loved that trip on the day,
And the visor presumably just sharpened him up a little bit.
Yeah, he was a very pacey horse that you were always trying to drag back, and then it just you keep trying horses, and sometimes you get it wrong and then you get it right, so and he got it right at a good time.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about one of my favourites.
Yeah.
I imagine this will go down as a number of people's favourite horses, and this is the mighty Mangeur, who I think Cassius Musin ride in the early part of his career. Then you were on board, so you won a series of big races on him. But the first big race you won, or the major race, was the Arc, which I think, in terms of gutsy performances in the Arc, I felt it was one of the most extraordinary performances I saw. The Japanese horse El Condor Pasa, just to set the scene, he's gone for home and he's got everything off the bridle and in trouble, and you had to really stretch to go and get him on.
I did, yeah. I had about 6 to make up on him at least, maybe. He let Condor Pasa kick off the home turn, and he was a very, very good horse, and pushed a big lead. And Michael had to show loads of courage to grab him close home, it was a great day.
What was Mangeur like when you first sat on him, and your impression of him?
Oh, he was the most regal looking horse I think I've ever seen, the most beautiful individual. And he was a big, proud horse, temperamental, a little bit French. But the more you sort of took a hold of him, the better he loved it, and he only went when he was good and ready. You couldn't say, come on, get a hold of your bridle, 4 out and shake yourself up. Not my time, so you had to be patient with him. You had to understand him, and when he was good and ready to go, he was a hell of a horse. He was like at his best. There was very few mile-and-a-half horses would ever touch him.
It's funny, you described that you had guts, you had to dig, and the race almost didn't pan out right for you. And the complete opposite when he's won the King George the next year, where to be honest with you should never have taken the money for the ride. It's one so.
I had to take it because it's pressure.
It's pressure.
But that was a hell of a sight to watch in the stands.
Yeah, he'd have done more than a piece of work against
Fantastic Light.
Fantastic Light.
Yeah.
When you see the horse that he treated with total contempt.
Yeah. As good as he ever was, do you think?
Yeah. He had matured fantastic, and really had, he had won, previous to that he had won a 5-runner race, the Rogers Gold Cup.
Mm-hmm.
I had to wait for he won the same. I had to wait for a run. I was trapped down the inside, a little gap open, and he just went through like that. And I think all 5 in that race that year won Group 1s.
Yeah.
And he done the same, But yeah, he just had a setback after that. We never saw the best of Mangeur again after the King George.
That was a shame because it felt like his career was slightly tainted at the end because he ran and he got beat 3 times. For a horse of that stature, if he'd stopped after the King George, we're talking about probably. I mean, we still are one of the all-time greats, but probably even higher ranked.
Was it physical that he went not so good, or?
Yeah, I rode him. I think it's the Prix, is the Prix.
The trial for the Arc.
Yeah, that was yesterday, and his movement wasn't the patch on what he had been going to the King George. So he had a setback, and he never recaptured. He was about 75% if of the horse that won the King George.
Yeah. To that point, I mean, and I know we still got more to come. Was he at that point the best middle distance horse you'd ridden?
Yes. Yeah.
Fair enough. I don't think anyone would argue with that at that point. Back to another very speedy, smart youngster was Fazliev, who only raced at 2, unbeaten. He won the Coventry at Royal Ascot, and then he went on to win 2 Group 1s, and then we never saw him again. I mean, how good a horse was he?
Yeah, he was probably the biggest imposing 2-year-old I ever sat on. Like he was take a throwback from American type horses that you go and you see in America. He had that size and physique. And he was a monster of a horse. Yeah, he was a great 2-year-old.
Which was the best performance? Because you think the Royal Ascot performance was quite smart in the Coventry.
He won the Irish Hinds.
The Phoenix. Yeah,
but came across the track on me for whatever reason. Like it was the old track up the middle of Leopardstown.
Yeah.
You know, stables on your right. If you think they're going to go anywhere, it'll be towards the right. And for whatever reason, he spotted something and came left and still bolted up after giving about 10 lengths.
You've never done that before, presumably?
No.
Yeah.
And to this day, I don't know why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he went on to win the Mornay by a wide margin, 3-4 lengths.
Yeah, he was very good too. Yeah, he was just. He was. You'd have to see him now in the flesh to realise how big a brute he was. You know.
Yeah.
Great horse. Great 2-year-old.
As they race now round the turn, taking them on the approach to the straight. Pugin in the lead from Mr. Combustible. Ice Dancer, Galileo just behind them in 4th place as they round the turn to take them into the straight. Behind them in 5th is Morshty. Then comes Vinnie Rowe and Exultation as they straighten up for home now. It's Pugin, the leader, on the far side, but here comes Galileo in the centre. They're being followed by Mr. Combustible, and then comes Morshty racing down now to the final furlong. And Galileo, the Epsom Derby winner, has gone for home. And Michael Kinane, who's never won an Irish Derby, is out clear. In 2nd place is Morshty and then Pugin. But Galileo is going to spread eagle this field and race up towards the finish. Galileo joins the greats in winning the dual derbies for Aidan O'Brien and Michael Kinane.
As they straighten up for home in the derby, and it's Mr. Combustible challenged by Perfect Sunday. Galileo pushed along on the outside, then Putra Sandhurst from Dilshan storming home, trying to get out. They've got just over 2 furlongs to go. Mr. Combustible and Perfect Sunday. Here's Galileo now charging down the outside, and Galileo comes to take over from Mr. Combustible. Then Perfect Sunday, Golan running on from the rear, then Dilshan and Putra Sandhurst, but Galileo is really opening up as they run down inside the final furlong. Galileo by 4 to 5 lengths. Golan staying on in 2nd place, but nearing the line. It's Galileo. He's left them toiling. It's no contest. Galileo, a brilliant winner of the derby.
2.5 to go, and Ice Dancer still way out clear of Give the Slip. Then Fantastic Light, Galileo running round the outside. They straighten up for home, and Ice Dancer comes under pressure. Now Galileo and Fantastic Light sweep through. The big rivals hit the front. Fantastic Light on the far side from Galileo. They're head to head for the final furlong. Galileo on the near side of Fantastic Light. They're inside the last 200 yards. Galileo on the near side. Fantastic Light battling for all he's worth. Head to head as they go to the line. Fantastic Light gets his revenge. Fantastic Light wins for Godolphin and Frankie Dettori. Galileo loses unbeaten record.
Even if it's not the best horse we're talking about, in terms of the long-term impact of any horse we're talking about, I think the next one, Galileo, who's obviously went on to be one of the great side, but just dealing with his racing career, you were saying to us that you thought around Derby time, he was really the finished article. Would that be fair?
Yeah, very mature.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he was a beautiful model of a horse. Like he was the perfect model for Epsom. Very athletic, beautifully balanced horse, you know, but was you know, it's hard for 3-year-olds in the beginning of June. The Derby is very difficult on them because they come so early in their career, you know, and they're don't have that much racing. You know, you're a late maturing 2-year-old. You're trying to get him there. It's difficult. But at that time of year, like he's the model you want, and the horse you would love to ride in any Epsom Derby. You know, he was just.
He really stretched out, and he looked almost the perfect physical horse or physical action for Epsom.
Yeah, he was a very genuine horse. Love, eager to please, tough, and that's why his progeny was so good, because he just loved racing. You know.
Well, I mean, he went on to, he won an Irish Derby, won King George. I mean, he had a fantastic CV in his own right.
Absolutely.
To be fair. But you think, you were saying that his genuineness was a trait which you think has really shone through as well in his
Absolutely.
offspring.
He was just tough. It took them ages to right. He was tough and hard and pulled hard.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was I forget, there was a chap in Ballydoyle at the time, Japanese chap, and he was, you know, he was very instrumental in getting. Because he didn't start on late in his career. He was difficult. He was so eager to get it on, you know. Yeah. And it took them a while to get him to settle, and then he was great, you know. But he was just wanted to get it on, you know.
Well, 2 great races with obviously 3-year-old career. Yeah. Was brilliant. But the 2 great races in the older horses category, the King George, where you beat Fantastic Light, and then of course a lot of people look back on the Irish Champion Stakes as one of the great races. You know, with Fantastic Life.
Yeah. Yeah, like they keep replaying it, so I can't get away from it. We played it the other day, and Frankie's scrolling about it again. But anyway, yeah, it was one of those. The year previous, we got our pacemakers got Frankie.
Yes.
And this time, Richard Hills rode. I forget what he rode.
Give the Slip, was it?
That was again was the Slip as well. Yeah. And Frankie shot through the inside, and I had to go around. So I had that length and a quarter more to do than Frankie had. Yeah. And that was sort of the defining part. And the ground on the day was just really firm. And I just, like, I had him and then didn't have him. It looked at the line that I finished better than Frankie, but Frankie sort of just done that at the winning post and made me look as if I was flying by him. But I was never going to, if we were to go down to the bottom, I still was never getting by him, you know. And it was, at the time, it was, you know, when you get beat, you know, what should I have done different? What could I have done different? But anyway, history. Yeah. At least we had a great race, you know.
Yeah, I always found it a shame he never ran in the Arc, and he ended up going for the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Yeah, it was just, I suppose, at the time, Coolmore, you know, if you could have a Derby winner that could go on and do America, it was a huge commercial thing at the time. Not so much anymore, but at the time that was a big thing.
You said he never really got his ground, you were telling us, or you said you always felt that a little bit of cutting the ground would have been perfect for him.
Yeah, like he always had good to firm in it all year, and you know, if he could have just had a little break or two on a little easier ground, would have been a bigger help. Would have been a help to him, you know, and then just having to had a hard ground all the time, or firm ground, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, one horse that did conquer the dirt in America was Johannesburg. Now, we'll get to that in just a minute, get to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile on the dirt. But his progression through his 2-year-old career was, I mean, we talked about Fazliev early on. Physically, was he a very different type of individual?
Yeah, he was only a lot handier type. He was, not say half the size of Fazliev, but might have been. But he was a great 2-year-old. Like, God.
From the moment you sat on him, from day one, he was...
Like, he just, any ground and any trip. Yeah. You know, he was undoubtedly the best 2-year-old I ever rode.
7 from 7 as well, so he's a very busy 2-year-old.
Oh, yeah, he just, you know.
Is that because of his size? You think they felt they had to get the best out of him at 2? Or?
No. It was just, he was one of those racing machines you could run and race, and he was thriving on it. You're not going to take that back. Unfortunately, like he's not with us or wherever he is now, but he just went of his wind. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's why he didn't train on at 3. So he still had the ability, but if they can't breed well enough, they just can't operate enough, you know. So, but he was a great 2-year-old.
Yeah.
Prior to going to the Breeders' Cup, what would have been the performance in Europe that you think was his best?
God, he won in France and both.
Won a Mornay in the middle park here.
Yeah, he did. You know, I don't think he was ever under pressure, was he?
No.
I mean,
And everything was easy, so I can't remember one standing out. For sure, I remember the Breeders' Cup.
I mean, that was easy as well. The way he scythed through the field late on.
Yeah, there was I forget the horse called the Officer, was it?
Yeah, Officer, that's it.
Was it Bob Baffert?
Bob Baffert, the thoroughbred court.
Giant of a thing. You know, Michael in the ring was dwarfed by most of them, you know, but he went around there like he always did. He was just a great horse. He's just hugely talented.
Yeah, that Breeders' Cup was funny because I often look at dirt racing. Obviously, you know a lot more than I do, but I always think in dirt racing, they race, they go hard, and then they just fall in at the end.
Yeah.
Whereas it seemed as if you actually travelled like on Johannesburg, like you would in a European race, and then just pick them up.
Yeah, he was so adaptable. Yeah, it's the opposite. They sprint early, and you know they burn off the speed. You know, it's all about strength.
Yeah.
On the dirt. But he was just so talented. He would just travel and quicken. There's very few horses you can see quicken like him in the straight.
Yeah.
In the Breeders' Cup or any of those bigger, you know, classic dirt races.
Yeah. Extraordinary horse.
Highest rated of 2-year-old that you rode, actually. I think he ended with a mark of 126, which is a high ranking for a 2-year-old. So he clearly was accepted that he was a really top horse.
They're right on a genuine pace here, and Shoal Creek, the rider, looking round to see where his stable companion is, and he just pulls off the rail to allow him through, and Mick Kinane can choose to go when he wants, if he can. Giant's Causeway the inside, Kalanisi in third under Pat Edry, then Leah Spear, Barathea Guest and Al Mushtarak. They run down to the final 3 furlongs then, and with his stablemate moving obligingly off the fence, Giant's Causeway takes over, but here comes Kalanisi with his run down the outside. Giant's Causeway, Kalanisi looks very strong out wide, challenging wider out, and that may be a sensible ploy here. Giant's Causeway possibly can't see him, they're not close together, and he battles hard if he can get a target, but it's Kalanisi and Giant's Causeway as they run to the final furlong. Giant's Causeway is battling well, Kalanisi on the near side, Kalanisi's just in front of Giant's Causeway, so they fight again. It's Kalanisi and Giant's Causeway at the line. Oh, Giant's Causeway maybe, but it's very close.
Running down towards the entrance to the straight, El Jabber out in front on the bit, leads by a length the Giant's Causeway. Manhattan drops away. In behind them is Valentino. Medician called on for an effort. Golden Silker is just behind them as they pass the 3, and Dan Silly coming there strongly on the near side. El Jabber though is the leader from Giant's Causeway. Valentino, here's Medician and Dan Silly down the outside with a big run. They come up with 2 furlongs left to travel. El Jabber on the far side, being tackled by Giant's Causeway. Here's Dan Silly, the danger, followed by Valentino, Medician, and further back is Golden Silker, a furlong to go. And on the near side, Dan Silly ranges up to Giant's Causeway. It's going to be a battle to the line, and the better fighter wins. It's Giant's Causeway. He gets up for another Group 1.
Apollo Victoria 3 in front. Giant's Causeway, best of the best, trying to improve on the outside, and as they come towards the turn into the straight, Giant's Causeway takes the inside berth. Best of the best has got to go round the pacemaker, and the 2 come head to head off the home turn. Best of the best races up to join Giant's Causeway. They're 4 clear of Greek Dance and Indian Danehill, and now the battle is on. Best of the best and the king of the battlers, Giant's Causeway on the far side. Greek Dance putting in an effort on the outside, racing now to the final 100 yards, and Giant's Causeway does what he does best. He's digging deep to win the champion. 5 Group 1s for the Giant.
Very contrasting horse again, not known for, although he wasn't a bad 2-year-old for his precocity, but more known for his toughness, was Giant's Causeway, who many people will be watching his favourite horse that we'll be talking about. And I'm guessing you've got very happy memories of him.
Oh yeah, I remember riding him here at Naces when he down the road here when he's maiden, and like he won, I don't know, probably when he won 8 or 10 lengths. And remember T.P. Burns, great rider at the time, who was he was in Vincent's and with Dermot, and I remember coming in, he saw him, he said, we saw one today, didn't we? I said, you did. Yeah, you saw a real good one.
Yeah.
He was tough as nails, you know.
And
the Iron Horse was aptly named in the wind-up.
Well, it did seem, I know, obviously, George Duffield rode him at Sandown.
Yeah.
But in the races where you and George rode him, it did genuinely seem that when another horse came to him, that he almost looked at the other horse and went, what do you think you're doing? Let me show you. Is that how it felt?
He was always waiting for something, you know, to scrap it, you know. One day the observatory got the better of me at
Ascot.
Yeah, he channels really wide.
Yeah.
They got their tactics right on that day, you know. And but yeah, he was, you know, he'd get himself into a bit of a temper behind the gates. He wasn't easy load,
Really?
but he was just working himself up, and he'd sweat up a bit. But once you know, you think, oh, this fella's, you know, he's worrying. No, he was just getting ready, getting warmed up for battle, you know.
When Calanese came to challenge in the Juddmonte International, it looked as if he's put his head in front of you.
Did you?
And the response, I mean, it's obviously wonderful watching it, but it genuinely was. And I know we sometimes look with so rose-tinted glasses, but it genuinely felt that Giant's Causeway was like, no, I'm coming back at you.
Yeah, I'm not having any of it. Yeah, I'm winning. Yeah, that was a great race with Pat and I. Yeah. God rest on Pat.
Did you share any laughs with Sir Michael after the race?
You know, maybe it was one of Pat probably shouldn't have challenged. If he waited a bit longer, he might have got the better of me.
Yeah.
You know, so there you go.
And what about the Breeders' Cup Classic? I mean, how do you look back at that?
Great race for us.
It was.
Against a great horse in Tisnell.
He ended up mugging Saki the following year. Done the same thing. You know, I thought I had him, and then I knew he was finding more, and I switched the stake and reins went a bit, and we didn't lose any momentum, but you know, it was one of those things that you'd prefer not happen, but it was a disappointment personally, but it was just, that's sport, you know.
He was sort of America's equivalent of Giant's Causeway, because he was a tough horse.
And he was a giant.
Massive.
He was 17 plus.
Yeah.
You know, he was 4 or 5 inches, I'd say, taller and longer. He was a giant of a horse. Chris McCann. It was a great tussle that I didn't win.
Yeah. But I mean, even so, the fact that he did what he did on the dirt.
On dirt, that's the point.
You know, at the end of a season like that, when you hear so many people talking about, you know, in the years gone by about Breeders' Cup coming at the back end of a season and being an afterthought, that
was a phenomenal run in a strong race. You know, hence he went on to become a great stallion.
Yeah.
In the States, you know. Yeah. So yeah, he was great memories of him.
And I think defeat somehow can enhance a horse's reputation. You know, doing what he did on an alien surface.
Yeah. I think he got actually more out of getting beat.
Yeah, I think he did.
Than winning. I didn't, but he did.
Correct. Steve, you love the next horse.
I do. We'll talk about sprinters. Your other. We had committed earlier, to be fair, would be on a par. But the 3 best sprinters you had committed early on, we haven't talked about. But we talked about Stravinsky. But Mozart, again, on July Cup Day was very good.
Yeah.
Another horse dropping back in distance.
Yeah. He was beautiful horse, great movement. You know, he had huge action, long action, not typical sprinter type, you know. But he was probably typical. He was ideally a 7 furlong horse, pull back. But he had that rhythm that you had to let at. You know, you just couldn't interfere with his breathing. He just needed to flow. So whatever it was at, you had to just go with it and let him progress. You couldn't stop starting.
Yeah.
And it took us a little while to get the real key to him. You know, and Aidan did. You know, so but he really could flow.
He won a Nunthorpe as well. Again, another horse who went on to
the saddler on. He jumped out through the saddle, leaving the gates, and I was sitting on. It was like skiing. I thought, is this going? Oh,
are you a good skier?
No, but it was a really precarious one. That the saddle could have gone at any second, you know.
So at what point? I mean, does it happen straight away? And you know,
he jumped out through leaving the gates.
And you knew straight away.
Oh, I was sure it was. Yeah. It was like this.
Right.
And I was on the back of the buckle end.
Wow.
And you had to try and hope it would stay. And at the same time, you still had to go with him, you know.
Yeah. Goodness.
It was a funny one. Well, it wasn't funny.
Well,
nice when it happened.
Now you can look back on it, but it was he won the Jersey and the July Cup.
Yeah.
and the Nunthorpe. I mean, that's some treble, 7-6,
75, yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously 3-year-olds then against the older horses, and he was obviously, I assume, he was an easy horse to ride to be able to do what you did with the saddle.
Yeah,
in that sense.
yeah. He had that just long rhythm, and all you just to stay with it. You know, luckily he didn't have to do too much other than just keeping balance, and he was doing the rest for you, you know.
The proof what you, again, we were talking beforehand, that the really good horses, even though they've been running over a longer trip, the really good ones, they've got pace. You know, they can cope with dropping back. As opposed to some out-and-out sprinters who are all, you know, burst and go.
Yeah.
The real classy sprinters are often horses who are adaptable distance-wise.
Any classy horse.
Yeah.
Discerns him from the rest of even the staying horses is how easy he travels through a race. He's conserving energy because going quick is easy. I know it can be an overused phrase when you're trying to make stallions, but that's the reality of the great horses is pace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In 2002, you had a few decent 3-year-olds to ride. We'll specify 3 of them. There's Hawkwing, Rock of Gibraltar, and High Chaparral.
Yeah.
Let's start with Hawkwing.
You got half hour?
Well, if we had a lot of time, we'd like to go into the mind of Hawkwing, which I think might have been one of the most interesting things ever. I mean, in terms of figures and performances, he produced one of the most startling performances on a racecourse as a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
When he won
The
Lockage.
Yeah. I remember something came out. What came out before the start? Something was withdrawn. That was the pace in the race.
Right.
It happened down at the start.
Yeah.
And I just thought to myself, there's no pace here. So I just said, I'm going to let this fella go. I hit the gates and go on, let him into rhythm. It was a little ease in the ground, which he loved at the time. And he just pulverized it. You know, it was a phenomenal performance. Like, to be fair to the horse, people say it was his temperament. It wasn't. He had some issues behind, back problems that came and went. And he was a hard horse to get 100%. You know, there was days he turned up and he was only 80%, you know. So in fairness to the horse, if he had remained 100% sound, he would have achieved an awful lot more.
You had a fair CV. I mean, you won the clips. You won. We've just said that they won the Lockage. Second in great 2-year-old. Second in the Guineas where they were running.
Yeah, wrong side of the track. Yeah.
Won his Guineas, if you like.
Beating a cut on the post in the Irish Champion Stakes.
Yeah.
And the Derby. I mean,
yes,
again, did you think you were going to win the Derby 2 out?
I knew my fate when the ground turned.
Ah.
And I've even said, hey, can I get off this? So I knew the other fellow.
High Chaparral.
If it remained good to firm, High Chaparral may not have run. But then the ground turned good to soft. And I knew we were in uncharted territory going 1.5 miles with him. I knew 1.25 miles as well within his cope. But sure, a great horse got the, turned it into a slog, and but either one of us had won, what, 8 or 10 lengths?
Yeah, miles clear, yeah.
Miles. So it was just one of those things that happened, he just coasted through the race, but just couldn't get back up the hill against a real tough, which turned out to be a great horse in High Chaparral.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things. That performance was the one that I think I felt he was a genuine horse to do what he did, because it was hard work that day in the ground.
Absolutely.
And it was a horse like High Chaparral, of top class.
Was only able to drag it out of him, yeah.
But what about that Guineas? We were talking about it earlier, and unfortunately you were suspended at the time, weren't you?
I was due to go and ride Johannesburg in the Kentucky Derby, and I had got suspended in Newmarket prior to it. And yeah, what would I have ridden on the day? I probably would have ridden Hawkwing on the day, but maybe I might have been steered to go the other way, and I might have stayed with the other fella to see if I could cope with him. But they both turned out to be great horses. Rock of Gibraltar, he was, he looked as if he was the outsider on the day, but what he proved to be afterwards, he proved to be a racing machine.
Well, he must have been so reliable for you that year, wasn't he? I mean, he just turned up over and over again and ran his race.
He was one of the few horses ever thought racing was great fun.
Yeah.
I remember going to start in the St James's Palace in Royal Ascot, And I was hacking away half asleep on him, on his own, up the top there, swindly bottom, and next thing, a squeal on the buck and a kick. He nearly got rid of me. He thought he was in a jolly, you know. He thought racing was great fun. You know, he just loved racing. And he was the one horse I would say I had the most fun on, was him.
Interesting, right.
Yeah, he was just push button, you know.
Push in the race, once it started.
Go to sleep, he'd wait.
Yeah.
Once we got to learn how to ride him. But he had a 100-yard dash that was, I never rode a mile like it.
And to win that sequence of 7 Group 1s, starting as a 2-year-old, through to, you know, obviously up until the Breeders' Cup, where obviously things didn't quite pan out, but that's a remarkable run of big race success. I mean, did it feel like hard work for him, or did it feel very easy?
No, that's why, because he thought it was great fun. You know, I never had a horse that enjoyed racing as much as him.
Was he a flash horse at home, or did he just, you know, well behaved?
He didn't have to do much at home. He was always racing.
Yeah, brilliant. That's true. Yeah.
No, but yeah, you know, those horses, he was just, you could follow anything with him, and he'd only do what you want him to do, and you know, he was an easy horse to train, I would say.
Was there one performance with him that maybe you thought he was unbeatable? There was
Royal Ascot, like he was, or even the Sussex.
Yeah, Sussex. He was.
God, he was, you know, he was so impressive.
And that the Breeders' Cup Mile was obviously, I mean, Landseer sadly.
Yeah, he just he was a bit fresh and he was a bit messy in the ears, and I missed the start. And I took the chance. I had to go. I knew I could have done the easy route and gone around the world, and I knew I couldn't do that. You know, so I took a chance. I had to go down the inside, and I was slinging. I was really flying through the middle of them off the home turn, and I was aiming at Landseer because I knew he'd get me out of the pack.
Yeah.
And he broke a leg in front of me, and I had to. You know, if that hadn't happened, it might have happened. You know.
Yeah.
So, but you know, everybody gave me a bit of flack at the time because I didn't go around the world, go the easy route. You can't just, you know, that would have been easy, and they, oh yeah, fine, he wasn't good enough. But I knew I had to take a chance, and it didn't come up.
Did you take criticism that you said flack? Did you take that well in your career overall, or you ignore it, or?
No, like, you have to. Like, it's not a question how you fall; it's how you pick yourself up in sport. Because most of it is disappointments.
Yeah.
You know, when you're on the world stage, you don't want to make a mistake. Who does?
Yeah.
You know, but it happens, and it's character building stuff. It has to be.
Yeah, we know that from what we do. The other 3-year-old in that year, as you already touched on, one of the toughest 1.5 mile horses in High Chaparral, who of course won the Breeders' Cup Turf twice.
Yeah.
His first year was very impressive. The second year turned into a bit of a scrum. How Johar gets up to dead heat will be one of the mysteries of all time.
I'm the same. Because I was always pretty good on photo finishes. I always knew when I won, and I was sure I won. How we got a dead heat to this day, I don't know. But anyway, listen, as it turned out, half a loaf is better than no fish. It's better than none. So, yeah, that was Aidan's, in my time there, Aidan's best training performance.
Really?
Yeah, he'd get him back, because I rode him, could have been the Royal Whip as a 4-year-old, his first start back at, and like, he fell in, you know, and I said, Aidan, God, he didn't move very well. He says, you know, we have a bit to go. I said, don't worry, he says, I'll get him there. And he got him to Leopardstown. He won the champion, and he won the Breeders' Cup again. Then, the way he got him from there to Leopardstown to the Breeders' Cup was, I don't know what he did, but he got him. And he said he would. Don't worry, I'll get him. Yeah. That for me was, my time riding with him was his best training performance.
Wow.
That was a fantastic year all round for you. 17 Group 1s, which is, as you said, has been beaten since, but at the time was a record, and well, it's a phenomenal year, whatever.
Ah, yeah, it's just, you can't dream of it. And you could start out in your life and say, well, can I ride 17 in a lifetime?
In a lifetime,
doing the season is
absolutely.
Just, it was a golden era of fantastic horses, and I was just lucky enough to be on them.
But those three we just talked about, they're very different horses, aren't they? I mean, you know, Hawk Queen, Rocker Gibraltar, High Chaparral, three of your, you know, most of your grade 1s actually, they're very different. Very different. I usually push button for one, maybe hard to predict, but very talented another, and tough as teak. High Chaparral.
That's something that you adapt to, and you know, you have to. You know, you have to get to know your horses, and you have to have a good trainer to point you in the right direction, and then you get an associate him, and you get to believe in them, you know, and you just gotta, you know, corner their strengths, you know.
Just going back to High Chaparral and the Irish Champion Stakes, we had the pleasure of chatting to Luca Comani.
Yes, that was
about Falbrav, who he said one of the best horses, probably the best horse he trained, and he talks about that Irish Champion Stakes and the admiration but irritation that he speaks about you in the same breath. As Darragh Holland tries to get a run up your inside on Falbrav, remains one of the most amusing moments in the series of Racing Greats. Because whilst obviously irritated by the fact that he couldn't, and that he said Mick Kinane rode, what was the phrase?
He's like a true professional. He rode within the rules, but as near to not being in the rules as you could get away with. He put it better than that. That's basically what he said.
Yeah, sure, we're there to bend him if we can.
You just sort of made him, his room got tighter, basically.
There wasn't quite as much room as he might have had.
Were you aware of him coming, though? Obviously you were.
I couldn't be, no.
Didn't know he was there, sir. No. Didn't know he was there, sir. But I mean, that sort of was, in a sense, you know, like when we were talking about what characterised you in the saddles, very few mistakes.
Yeah. Right
position, right time, and very few people got the better of you in crunch situations. Would that be a summary that you would be A, happy with, and C, agree?
B, not for me to say, but yeah, I was very determined, very competitive. Yeah, I like to win. If I could.
Your homework on these, I mean, you obviously knew the opposition pretty well, what their traits were.
You know your horses, but you got to know your jockeys.
Yeah, interesting. Right.
You got to know where some will move earlier than most if you can push them to it, you know. So you got to know them. You got to know horses. You got to know your form. But you got to know your jockeys too.
Yeah. Obviously, the spell at Coolmore, Ballydoyle came to an end. Moved on to John Ox, and rode some pretty good horses for him. The first horse we'll mention is one that I know, Steve, you admired.
I loved
the way John Ox trained him.
Yeah, I did. I always thought it was the Azamor, sorry, we're talking about.
Yeah.
I thought it was a brilliant. It's almost if you're going to write a copybook about training, it was trained perfectly, from improving from 2 to 3 to 4, distances sort of slightly changing, with lots of patience involved, you know, in the early stages. I really thought you got the best out of the horse in the end.
I did, you know. Yeah, to move on from Ballydoyle and then to find one like that so quick,
fabulous.
Was great. You know, was able, my transition then going downwards, it was still going forwards, you know. So, yeah, he was a very lovely racehorse, very easy ride. You know, he got placed in the Guineas and got mugged a bit at the Irish Guineas. One flashed late, he wasn't able to react, and then he won the St James's, didn't he? And then I forget what he won then, but I won the Irish Champion on him, didn't I?
You did.
At 3, yeah.
Yeah, you stepped him up in trip, and he was old.
He won the King George. Well, it was at Newbury.
Really good.
Yeah, he was.
He won the Prince of Wales as a York.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
And the King George at Newbury, as you say. When Ascot was being run.
When Ascot was being run, and got beaten the Breeders' Cup, didn't it? We just got back a bit on him.
Yeah, he was a bit unlucky behind Scirocco.
Yeah, we just got a bit behind it. Yeah, didn't quite stay in touch enough, I think, that day. But he was a very, overlooked horse, but very good one. Yeah, he was just a lovely calm horse that you could ride. You know,
sort of typifies the trainer in some ways, don't you think? Very calm and would that be fair?
Very same, yeah.
Yeah.
What would be the best performance of Azamor's, do you think?
The Irish Champion at 3.
Yeah.
Remember His Highness the Aga Khan was up in the helicopter, he couldn't land.
Right.
He watched it from the air. He didn't think I was going to get up. But we produced him late and got up in a Titanic finish. But it was just Leopardstown. It's a long way up on Champions Day if you start your run early. You know, so that was commanding performance on the day.
See the Stars away to the extreme right now, beginning to come with a bit of a run as they head down inside the last 2.5 furlongs. An open-looking race, Evasive just spearheads them. See the Stars now charging on the right. Delegator is unleashed on the left by Spencer. These three battling on from Master Craftsman, Guineas and Rip Van Winkle. They race towards the final furlong. Delegator and See the Stars. Evasive is third, then Guineas. Rip Van Winkle stays on well inside the final furlong. See the Stars on the near side for Mick Kinane from Delegator, and See the Stars wins a 4th Guineas for Mick Kinane.
It's Golden Sword for the first time, just encouraged along to go a shade faster. Age of Aquarius in second. They still have a break of 6 lengths over Kitewood and See the Stars, who will corner in 3rd and 4th places. Towards the outside, Guineas is being furiously ridden on the outer of Montaf. Fame and Glory still goes okay in 5th place. Golden Sword kicks for home, and now the Derby is up for grabs, passing the 3. It's Golden Sword who leads from Age of Aquarius. See the Stars, the yellow jacket, Fame and Glory, ridden along. Kitewood fades away. Rip Van Winkle tries to close. Golden Sword on the front end, leads passing the 2. See the Stars in the yellow colours, and Fame and Glory are out after the leader. Then Age of Aquarius, Rip Van Winkle. Golden Sword being gathered in by See the Stars. Now the stamina questions will be answered inside the final furlong. See the Stars from Fame and Glory. Rip Van Winkle late on the scene down the outside. See the Stars will complete the Guineas and Derby double. See the Stars won the Investec Derby.
They're inside the 3, Lang Shining set sail, Malibu Bay, the principal's pulling wide sensibly. Here comes See the Stars in the hands of Mick Kinane, and he's going to have to commit pretty early here as they run down inside the 2. See the Stars chased now by Rip Van Winkle, and here's Conduit the Stair out wide under Ryan Moore unleashing his run. See the Stars will have to dig in. Rip Van Winkle, his old rival, is closing up on the Guineas and Derby winner inside the final furlong. See the Stars by half a length to Rip Van Winkle. He's beating off Rip Van Winkle. They race up to the line. See the Stars, this shining star. See the Stars wins the eclipse. See the Stars remains in last place in the hands of Mick Kinane. George Bernard Shaw and Set Sail, they've set the pace. Master Craftsman lays 2.5 lengths back in 3rd. See the Stars is just on his heels. He's just watching Murtagh's every move here, Mick Kinane. Murtagh going for a gap between his pacemakers on Master Craftsman, who's going to take it up with about just under 3 furlongs left to travel. See the Stars comes through between them as well and is absolutely cantering. Murtagh gets to work. He says go on Master Craftsman. Can he shake off See the Stars? Mick Kinane begins to push away in 2nd place on the Derby winner. There's a length and a half between them. They race down to the final furlong. Master Craftsman, See the Stars now challenging on the near side. The gap down to half a length. And Nick, See the Stars beginning to get up on the near side. Oh, every inch a champion and a fabulous 4-timer. See the Stars wins the Judgmont International.
But it is Set Sail who's 6 lengths in front. Rockhampton, Master Craftsman, Grand Ducal. They're being followed by Fame and Glory now, who races up on the outside of See the Stars. And as they race now on the approach to the straight, Set Sail is the leader from Master Craftsman. Fame and Glory is now tracked by See the Stars, and Fame and Glory has raced up to join Master Craftsman, being chased by See the Stars in 3rd. They are clear. It's Fame and Glory, Johnny Murtagh in front. See the Stars and Mick Kinane ranging up on the near side, and See the Stars, they've come to see a star, and it's See the Stars who hits the front for Michael Kinane and John Oakes, and racing up towards the finish, the undisputed champion. See the Stars is running away. He's going to score by 2.5 lengths.
They race towards the turn in the arc, and the leaders are a long way clear. Set Sail, and also on the outside, the other one, Grand Ducal. They're about 5 in front now of Stasolita. He's getting up on the inside on See the Stars. He's got 6 or 7 lengths to make up. He'll have to be a champion. Stasolita races into the lead now. 2 in front. He is a champion, I reckon. He's got the run now in the centre. He's out after the leader. He picks up Stasolita. He powers clear. See the Stars racing away. Perfection in equine form. A horse of a lifetime. He's just going to go on and win the arc by 2 lengths.
We are saving the last one, I think, appropriately, as the horse of a lifetime in completing the list of unarguable racing greats. And that's See the Stars. So I'd like to begin with when you first saw him, when you first sat on him, first impressions?
It would have been the end of April, and John said I would do 2 mornings a week, Tuesdays and Fridays fast works, you know. And second lot, he said, I have some 2-year-olds this morning for you to ride. I said, John, this is pretty early for you. Are you getting losing the run of yourself? Oh, he says, never mind. He says, I have some nice horses for you to ride. He says, okay, all right. So anyway, this big leggy bay waltzed up, and he says, I said, what's that? He says, that's half brother to Galileo. I said, really? I says, how'd you get him? Oh, he says, never mind. He says, get up on him. Anyway, so usual introduction, half speed, down to the race course, turn in, and just let him come back and organise himself and just point his toe a little bit, and a gentle piece just to try and organise him. And I remember explicitly saying, as I stood off him, I says, this fella finds going quick so easy. So I said, he's a beauty. That was my exact words. I remember to this day. And he never disappointed. One morning after that, it was always those people would turn up to see him going up the hill. He would do more of a morning than he wouldn't do in the afternoon. He would only beat a horse at home. But the sight of him heading over the top of Welch's Hill, you know, it was just, people would turn up and watch him from the distance. You see this horse just, it was just...
You see it now in your face about you obviously gave you great days. Not just the racing days, just great days.
The morning, I never missed a morning on him. I might have missed one morning to ride him a piece of work, you wouldn't have to set the alarm to get out of bed for him, you know.
He was bright as well, wasn't he? You said he didn't miss a trick.
Oh, he was a very intelligent horse, yeah. Had that slow walk about him, and John had sent him out on his own ahead with his, because he just wanted to, everything else was quick. The walk was slow, methodical, and everything, he took everything into, noticed everything. Anything was out of place, he'd say it, you know, because if he saw something new, he'd stop and say, oh, that wasn't there yesterday. Because in the wind-up, people, opposition thought that they heard he was stopping on the curve, it was going to be easy beat him, and no, he was just on show, you know. He thought he owned the place, you know.
If we could just go through that 3-year-old career, race by race, if that's okay. The Guineas, the start wasn't ideal. What happened?
Yeah, it's the only time he ever missed the start. Yeah, I was drawing one, and he was looking at the starter on the up in the stand, and just missed it. But in 3 strides, he was right in the posse I wanted him to be. He just, how quick he made it up was just, it was instantaneous, you know. And he had a setback leading into that. He had an infection, got an infection, I'd say 5 weeks out or 6 weeks out. Fortunately, John had him in a good place that, you know, and we had to throw a good bit of work on him late, more than you would ideally want to. But a horse of his constitution, he took it in his stride. You know, that was probably his greatest, to be able to push him and take what he did on a trip short to what he did. You know, and preparation wasn't ideal. And that was a great performance by him.
When you asked him to quicken, it looked as if it took him 2 or 3 strides to sort himself out. But then suddenly he's gone. Yeah,
just as down the hill. But that was him. He was such a long striding horse. He might 1, 2, but by the time he got to about the 3rd one, he was away, you know.
Did you have any doubts about the 1.5 miles going into the Derby? We know you went from Guineas to Derby. Did you have any doubts in your mind that you'd get the trip?
No. I remember Lester, God rest him, was making a presentation to me on Guineas Day, you know, afterwards, and he said, will you stay? I said, yeah, good. So I think Lester got on. So yeah, that's what I said to Lester. He would stay. I knew he was bred to stay. I know it wasn't by a stallion that would stay, but it's the dam, probably arguably the best dam of all time, Urban Sea.
And you were talking earlier about the Derby when you talked about Commander-in-Chief and saying, in terms of a test of a horse, it is the greatest test of a horse. I felt, and I think John Ops has mentioned it as well, that he just floated around Epsom, floated down Tatton Corner. It was majestic.
Yeah, for such a tall, leggy horse at the time. He changed a bit late in the autumn. He started to mature more. He changed his shape. But that's the beauty of him. He was so speedy. You were always, come here, you know, you were always in control of what you're doing, and that's the key, huge key of Epsom, is horses on top of their head, not able to go quick enough to be able to get the balance. And he was just, he was just something different.
And the Eclipse? Straightforward?
Great race.
It was, yeah. We were to run at the Curragh and the weather sort of conspired against us. And then like to have a horse trained for the Derby and then to drop him back to 1.25 miles. Like the Eclipse Sanad is an unusual track, you know, when you look at it. And it's hard for horses to accelerate because you're really on the pull up. And I went to I got to the front sooner than ideal because he travelled into it beautiful, and knowing the nature of the track, I didn't want to do that and then have something sort of come at you. So I sent him on and he dusted a bit. And Rip Van Winkle came with a really wet sail at a time when it's difficult for a horse to react. But he reacted and then just started to pull away again, you know. So.
Just before we go on, I made an omission that I meant to ask you. John Ox has repeated over the years, he said that when he came back in after winning the Derby, you jumped off. And it actually gives me goosebumps just saying it. He said you got off and you whispered to him and you just quietly said, "This is one of the greats." Why did you say that?
Because I knew we had one.
Well, what was the feeling that made you say at that?
I knew he was what he was doing at this early stage of his 3-year career, I knew he was only going to get better.
Really?
He was, you know, he knew he was going to mature and get better, and he loved racing. And he was a very active horse that you had to stay going with. He's not a horse you say, "Oh, we'll give this fella a break and throw him out in the paddock." No. Just wanted routine, work, and liked racing, you know.
And then after the Eclipse, the International at York, which, looking back, it almost sort of race that you could have a laugh at the way it sort of transpires up the home straight. Yeah,
we had sort of 3 Ballydale stuff. So and it was always going to turn into a tactical affair. And he had 2 pacemakers in front, Johnny's following, and I'm following Johnny, and it's all going grand. And then, of course, the boys split, and Johnny kicks down the middle. So my options were at that stage was, do I want to go around a 3.5 pole and send him at the middle of the track and get him going too early? I said no, so I kicked in behind Johnny before the gap closed. Like, because that's when I asked him, and he just charged into it, and I nearly ran into the back of Johnny, and had to pull him back and stop his run. And then Johnny sort of then kicked in and found about 3 lengths, because my fellow, you know, says probably just. I kicked him in and took a pull, and then he sort of probably had a look at me. He says, "What do you make your mind up? What am I going to do here? Do you want me to go or stop?" So, and then he pulled out late and won easy again. You know, he could always just find more. You know.
I mean, and the Irish champion was pretty.
You must have been driving Ballydoyle mad at this stage, because they threw so many horses at you. They had another go in the Irish champion, and same story.
They threw really everything at him that day. They threw Master Craftsman and Fame and Fortune. Fame and Glory, sorry, I'll never forget Johnny. That day, Johnny came around and I sat. I took a pull out. Johnny gave me a bit of a tap going by and then took off. And then I came in, of course, I bought one easy on it, you know. So, and I remember Johnny coming in and I was just, "Why didn't you move? It was too far out." He was just perplexed and I wouldn't go. He went up to say and put pressure on me to go and move. And I said, no, it's too far there. I said, no, well, too early, I said. And I have, in fairness to Aidan that day, he came, we were in the winner's enclosure and he came around and he sort of took an imaginary hat off and threw it in the gun. He said, "When you finish kicking that around, he said, will you hand it back to me?" So in fairness to him, you know, he said, you know, he took his hands up, the horse was doing all the talking, you know.
Yeah, it's great.
But you still had one more to go.
I've one of those days where in racing, everything was great. I mean, it was a lovely day. It's in the Arc, obviously. The expectation there in the crowd was they wanted to see the great horse finish with a win, obviously he did as well. And barring one brief moment where, you know, was the gap going to appear, it went like clockwork, and he showed again what a great horse he was. Yeah,
I remember we were in the parade ring and the horse arrived in and everybody clapped him into the parade ring. You know, they just, you know, the whole world turned up to see this horse, to see him win an Arc. I remember saying to John, I said, "I hope they're clapping in 10 minutes' time." I said, "Otherwise we're in trouble." But yeah, the race went a bit funnily. As usually hit the gates very aggressive and straight into his stride, and pacemaker went off. But Pat Smullen, God rest him, missed the start on the other pacemaker, and I had just had him grand, and next thing, Pat comes swinging by me after about 100 yards. And then my fellow went to go, oh, I want to go here. And I said, oh, come here. And then a few got around and I got channeled back because I didn't want him over racing in third on his own, leading the pack, you know. So I had to come back into not an ideal position, and then sort of Christoph Samillion parked the bus on was a filly. And he stayed way back off of the two pacemakers, and we went a bit steady. And my fellow was just, he always looked as if he was pulling harder than he did for whatever reason. I was never in any problems with him, you know. But there was always, from draw 5, we always knew at some point you're going to need an out. And if I panicked about that, leaving the gates, then there was only one way: go left and stay out of trouble, you know. It's not possible. So you have to have that confidence in the horse that he's going to get you to where you need to get. And we turned for home, had a half a look at trying to come up the middle, and it wasn't there. And then I saw ahead, I got rid of that. And they never said anything to me at the time. I should have done, but and then I was following Oliver Pelly, I forget the name of the horse, and he kicked for a gap that was ahead of him. Yeah, he was a dual Group 1 winner, and I was able to loop him to get to the gap ahead, and that was his greatest moment, because when the chips were down, you were out of trouble.
What was that like? What did that feel like for you?
I was fabulous, you know, because I banked on him. And if he wasn't able to produce what I needed, hoped he produced, it was going to be my fault, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But you know, but that's not something you can be afraid of setting out. It's only something you can deal with if it happens.
Yeah. We were standing in the kitchen earlier, and you referred to it yourself, Jim McGrath on the BBC commentary. He says, where you were positioned, he said he'll have to be a champion. And then, but before he could finish that sentence to say about getting out of trouble, you were out and gone, and he said he is a champion.
Yeah, Oliver Pellier said he'd never had a horse going by him so quick.
In a mile and a half.
Yeah, he thought he was quickening, and I just... So, yeah, it was great that the commentary, it was so apt at the time that it does show what he did do, you know, and the commentary complimented the race, you know, the move.
My memory though, you weren't particularly, you weren't a Frankie and jumping up in the air as a jockey afterwards. You looked really happy that day. I remember as you were walking the horses, like you felt like it was the perfect end of the horse's career. You just looked,
Well, and I knew it was mine.
Yeah, so it must have been you just looked like it was almost a relief and a joyous
fairy tale finish.
It was, yeah. Like you in sport, very seldom you can choose your mount to check out, and it generally checks you out. But I knew this. I had said to Catherine my wife through the year that if it went well, I'd finish. So I did.
All the years interviewing you, Mick, I've never known you to be emotional. But this horse did something to people that...
It was a good one.
Yeah, he's great.
Genuinely amazing. I know it's probably not the sort of thing that everybody gets the opportunity to talk about, but we were talking about Frankel and See the Stars earlier with you, and it's pie in the sky. But that would have been some contest, wouldn't it?
Oh, two giants.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have stopped my fella though.
No, absolutely. They're two different giants.
Yeah. Frankel was so enthusiastic, and he was just a freakish racehorse. The way to be able to do what he did and be so enthusiastic and still able to do it. And my fella was the opposite, but I would have loved Frankel to try and drag my fella out of it. So it would have been a race of decades. I would say.
Yeah.
Christ. That would have been something else. If you'd stayed in training at 4, I assume you would have carried on riding?
Oh, I would, yeah. God, you wouldn't have left him behind, but he actually grew 1.5 inches from 3 to 4 physically.
That would have been something.
Like he ended up 16, 3.5. Like he was a big horse, Like any horse that gets close to 17 hands is. I saw him yesterday morning.
Oh.
And he looks fantastic, yeah.
A lot of people Obviously, that played a significant part, or, you know, the trainers, the jockeys that you rode against. I mean, when we look at the breadth of jockeys through your career, you know, obviously from the likes of Leicester to Frankie and
Willie Carson, Pat Edery,
Steve Cawthon.
They were the guys that I had to cut. You know, they taught me. They taught me the trade. You know,
toughest opponent in the saddle.
I have to hand it to Frankie. Yeah. Yeah, and we had great scraps. He well prepared, mentally very strong, tactically aware. You know, and yeah, we had great scraps now. But I don't think we ever had a bad board. You know, we're good friends to this date. You know, so yeah, he gets it because he's earned it.
Yeah.
And the trainers that you rode for, you know, you mentioned some names early on, Liam Brown, etc., all the way through to Dermot, Aidan O'Brien, John Ox, then all the other individuals that you rode for, whether it was Sir Michael Stout, Henry Cecil, John Hammond. I mean, it's a vast breadth of top-class trainers worldwide.
Yeah, all different characters, and yeah, I rode for the best of them.
Mm-hmm.
Is there one thing that sort of one characteristic that you see in all the great ones, or the, you know, I don't know, is it attention to detail or something as similar? Are they all very different?
Oh yeah, all different ways, but they have a vision, you know, and they understand their horse. You know, you've got to know your horse, and they live with them, and the real ones understand them.
Were you ever tempted to go into training?
No.
Too sensible?
I just had given enough to what.
Yeah.
I didn't think I had any. That's a very different profession, you really got to be into it. And I just didn't think I had what to give to it.
When you announced your retirement after See the Stars in 2009, there are a number of people paying tribute to what you did in your career, and I hope you don't mind me embarrassing you here, but I think it's worth just hearing a few of them. From some of the greats of the game as well. Henry Cecil said at the time, he said, Michael Kinane, in my opinion, was a brilliant top-class jockey, a gentleman and a great ambassador for racing. He rode quite a few Group 1 winners for me, including the Derby. Thank you very much, Michael. Racing will miss you. Pat Smullin, your successor, obviously at Dermot's, he quite simply said you were the greatest of them all and you were his hero. And John Ox, who of course you rode See the Stars with, he said, talking about the finish of that riding career, he said you couldn't have predicted it or planned it, but it has been great for him to have had the best horse he ever rode in that final year. It's the sort of end that Mick Kinane deserves. I mean, you know, I don't want to make you emotional, but to hear that after the career that you've had, riding with so many different people, you know, and hearing those tributes to you at the end of your career, what's that satisfaction like?
It's great when your fellow peers say it, because the public is a different thing, but it's the peers, your fellow peers, who you touch the most. It's their opinion that matters.
Well,
Some career.
it has been some time sitting here talking to you, mate. Honestly, it's a real privilege. I mean, I say this to everybody we go to because you are all racing greats, and you have been part of our love of the sport. You know, Steve and I speak for the racegoers, the punters, the people who go racing, who watch it all day, every day. Your career has been absolutely fantastic to follow. This is just an opportunity for us to say thank you for all that you've done for the sport, and thank you for all the memories. And also thank you for letting us come to your palatial home. And we hope that we'll see you on the racecourse in and around the sport of racing for years to come.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.